Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of the Modiragatsi competition. We are so glad that you're still with us, and we are very happy that with today's sunny weather, that you guys all responded quite positively to the assignments that you had. Most of you are caught up to where you're supposed to be at this stage, but if you're not caught up yet, please make an effort to catch up. So this week, just want to share the screen. Okay, this week we will be focusing on the last aspect of design thinking, focusing on testing that idea of yours, and then storytelling to package the idea. And then in our personal development slot this week, we will be focusing on the brain-gut connection. So just to give you the general overview again, remember that over the 12 weeks, we will be focusing on 6 different topics. For these first 3 weeks, you have been focusing on design thinking. And in design thinking, we have first focused, or I will give you an overview of that again. But next week, we will be moving on to computational thinking. After that, we will focus on user experience design, then on mobile app development, then on intellectual property protection, and lastly, we will be focusing for a whole 3 weeks on how to pitch your business idea. So keep in mind that this will be the end of design thinking after this week. So by Monday next week, when you submit your last assignment for design thinking, we will be moving on to a completely different module. So it is very difficult to then stay caught up or up to date with everything that you need to do if you fall behind now. So if you're at all behind at this point in time, please complete it within the next week. So just to give you a general overview of design thinking again, remember that we all started off with the empathize phase, where we looked at who your end audience would be. Who would be that ideal user that will use whatever you are designing, and that we used to characterize the typical user or the typical client. We then also focused in week 1 on the define phase, where we constructed a point of view based on that user's needs. And we really made sure that we asked the right questions. So whatever you started this competition with, the idea you had, we asked you to wipe the slate clean and rethink everything. Okay, last week we focused on the ideate and prototyping phases. Firstly, we asked you to brainstorm and come up with some creative solutions. And some of those solutions might have been the original one that you entered with, but we asked you to keep an open mind and to really rethink what you had in mind with that specific aspect. And then we also asked you to create a representation, a prototype of your idea. So if it was an app, I asked you to draw the different screens and make them in the shape of a typical phone, or if it was a new system that needs to be designed, you could have created some avatars that could move around a scenario that you created with some toys or whatever you had at home. It could also be some sketches. So if you're not that creative or you didn't want to make something tangible, however, making something tangible is really useful at this point in time, you are now ready to go into the testing phase. So this week you will see that we will showcase a structured way in which you can test your ideas. So you are going to give that prototype that you created from some of the ideas that you created in your ideate phase. So maybe you created one prototype, or maybe you created more than one prototype. You are going to hand that prototype to your typical user. So the typical user that you created or imagined in the empathize phase, you are going to hand your idea to them. And once they have that in their hands, you are going to observe them while using that product. So we haven't spent any time or any money to actually implement it, but we have this prototype. You are now going to test it, and you're not going to tell them how to use it. You're going to see how well they actually understand what you told them to do. And while they are then actually using it, you are going to use a matrix, and you'll see there's 4 blocks on the typical matrix that you'll use to see whether people actually understand what they're supposed to do or where some more prompting would be needed. You could have seen where they completely misunderstood, and you definitely change the flow or change the words you use if it's an app to indicate the next step. You are also going to document new ideas that you get while doing this, and you're also going to listen to whatever your user is saying while testing your idea in terms of new ideas that they bring to the table. So that will all happen in the testing phase. And then the last one will be the share phase, where you're going to use storytelling to convince others that your idea is a good one. And you're going to use that to document everything that you have learned up to this stage before we move on to the conceptual thinking stage that will come after this one. So I really hope that you enjoy this phase. Every time that I implement design thinking in my own projects to create new products, I enjoy this phase immensely, because it's the first time that you get to share your ideas with others, and it's also the first time that you get to see whether it is a good solution or not. And as they are testing it, you're getting more and more solutions. So it's a very creative process, and I love this phase. So I really hope that you get the same enjoyment from this phase that I do. Then also remember to stay connected for both support and to share your journey with us on social media. I haven't seen many posts where you have tagged us in, so please, anything that you're creating now, I want to see those prototypes. I don't want to only see them in the assignments that you're creating. I also want to see them on social media and see how you embrace this journey of design thinking. So take a picture of it and share it with us so that we can get excited with you, and so we can also share your ideas with our wider audience and share the excitement. You can do this on either Instagram or Facebook or other platforms if you use them. Just send us a link to wherever we can follow you. We might hand out a social media engagement prize as well. So keep being creative. You'll also see that later on this evening, I will share some images with you of our student assistants who spent some time at my house yesterday, and we packed all of your goodie bags. So the first ones were delivered to the school in Potch today, and the others will be sent via courier as of tomorrow. So it will be a good time for all of you to keep an eye out. Make sure that we have your correct courier address before we send them tomorrow. So by the end of this week or very early next week, we hope that every one of you will have your own goodie bag. And like I'm wearing my shirt today, I want you to take some pictures with your goodie bag, share with us how you're using it and how it's stimulating your creative thoughts while you're partaking in our competition. But also then remember that it is not all about the new technical skills that you're acquiring, and that it is very important for you to also develop as an individual on a personal level, and that is why we involve the Center for Health and Human Performance and the Care to Kids team specifically within that group to speak to you about some topics that we know is very important in your personal development journey as an adolescent. So this week, we will be focusing on the brain-gut connection, and I'm very excited to introduce Prof. Lisa Haverman-Nel and Mrs. Hanley Deegenoord from the Center for Health and Human Performance in the Faculty of Health Sciences to speak to us about this very important topic this week. Okay, so Lisa, you can take it away.
Well, actually, I'm going to start, Linda. Thank you very much. Well, we are so happy. Can I just share my screen with you? Right. I just have to change the video. Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Well, we could just now. You stopped
I'm
sharing.
going to share again. I forgot to click on the sharing sounds and video clips. There. So I hope you can see.
Yes, it is.
Right, so we're so happy to be part of this again, and we're so excited to continue the conversation with all the learners that are taking part in this competition. Last week, we announced that our talk today will be about the connection between your tummy and your brain. And I'm sure that some of you were thinking, oh my, what are these people going to talk about? You may wonder if we have the wrong PowerPoint today. We're seeing it's called The Story of Two Brains. It is, however, correct. A story, can I just remind you, is a description, either true or imagined, of a connected series of events. And our story today is about two brains. And it's not imaginary, it is true, and it's backed by science and will reveal an amazing series of events in your body you may not have known about before. So let's paint the backdrop for this story. Let me ask you, did you know that there are 100 billion neurons in your brain and nervous system that tells your body how to behave? Interestingly, there is 500 million neurons in your gut that also tells your brain and body how to behave. That's interesting. So your tummy is telling your brain and your body what to do, just as your brain is telling the rest of your body what to do. This link between your brain and your tummy is called the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis informs the brain of the internal state and health of your body. So it just says, this is where I am, this is how your body is doing. It's really important. This sense is called interoception, and it is crucial for the maintenance of physiological balance in our bodies, a state known as homeostasis. Much like the seesaw action that we have on a seesaw, is your body is always going up and down, trying to get that perfect balance right in the middle, just like when children are playing on a seesaw. These two organs, your brain and your gut, share a complex communication network, constantly receiving and sending messages via physical and biochemical connectors. So the messages are just going up and down all the time. And that connection we call the vagus nerve. It is the highway connecting the brain and the gut. The information or the signals speeds in both directions, and it really speeds. It's really like a highway going up and down, up and down. Most of the communication is from the gut, telling the brain what it needs to work properly. So isn't that interesting? Most of the communication is from the gut, telling the brain what it needs to work properly. So, who's in charge? It might be your gut. So 80 to 90% of the communication messages are from the gut traveling up to the brain. It sends electrical signals to just about every major organ in our body, and it also receives that from the organs in our body, and that message goes to our brain. Vagal tone is essential for the speed and efficiency of the signals traveling both ways. But stress is one culprit that lowers vagal tone, which means that that message and the speed of the message won't be carried as effectively as when you've got good and vibrant vagal tone. Low vagal tone causes constipation, low stomach acid, sometimes leaky gut, inflammation in the gut, imbalance in gut bacteria, and a lack of digestive enzymes to break down food. So that doesn't sound nice. And some of you might think, oh, no, I don't have issues like that, but it is important. We might not always be aware of some strain that your body is experiencing. These are the facts. Our brains are physically connected to our gut via the vagus nerve. The gut and brain are also connected biochemically through neurotransmitters that controls our feelings and emotions in the brain, such as noradrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, and acetylcholine. Neurotransmitters are like runny chemicals that carry signals from one neuron to another, creating electrical sparks between synapses carried from one neuron to another to deliver the brain and body messages that actually powers your thinking and your moving and your doing. So these runny liquids are fast acting, much like petrol on fire. It causes this amount of sparks going up and down in your body. These neurotransmitters affect voluntary actions such as eating, bathing, walking, hitting, kicking, and more activities. It also affect involuntary actions such as breathing, blinking, pulling away, catching, and more. And does that sound like the chemicals that can determine effective action? I can assure you, action potential at best. Serotonin contributes to feeling good and helps with sleep and digestive system regulation. Noradrenaline is essential for concentration and quick responses. Everything all of us want. Dopamine regulates the experience of pleasure and motivation, but also addiction. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later when we talk about food. Then acetylcholine is essential for thinking, memory, and learning. It's also associated with attention and being fully awake. There's also GABA-glutamate, which is involved in calming the firing nerves, and it's involved in memory and learning. Endorphins, which reduces pain and creates excited energy, and adrenaline, which increase your heart rate and blood flow to give a physical boost and sharpen awareness. All these chemicals and some others are involved in getting signals from the brain to the body and back, and all of them also have connections in the gut. Although most neurotransmitters is produced in the brain, they are also produced by trillions of microbes living in your gut. So let's take a look at some astonishing facts about your gut and the microbes who call it home. Did you know that the gut is our largest body surface, 100 times larger than the surface area of the skin? So if you think of your body on the outside, your gut is 100 times larger than the surface of your skin. The gut has the size of a basketball court, and it's packed with thousands of little sensors that encode the vast amount of information that is contained in your food in the form of signaling molecules that gives the perception that we need to know whether food are sweet or bitter, hot, cold, and even signals from food being spicy or too soothing. The gut has more neurons than the entire spinal cord. The gut contains around 80% of the body's immune cells. So you can see that the gut is really important. The endocrine cells in the intestinal walls make the gut the largest endocrine organ in the body. The gut is also thought of as being our second brain, and that's where the story of two brains comes in, because the gut has its own nervous system. Did you know that? So, and that's the reason why scientists are saying that our guts are just as important as our brains. It's our second brain. The gut can influence our basic emotions, our pain, sensitivity, and our social interactions, and even guide many of our decisions, and not just those about food preferences. The gut interacts with and receives signals from the largest microbial population of our body. About 38 trillion microbes reside in the gut and are collectively known as the gut microbiota. So, let me hand over to my colleague.
Thank you, Hanli. Yeah, so Hanli just introduced the gut microbiome to you, but let's move a little bit closer and let's meet your microbes, all those trillion little cells that's living in the gut. So although the gut microbiota hosts trillion of little microbes, these bacterial species are actually divided up into species, and the microbiome consists of more than 100 bacterial species grouped together in 6 main groups. And these groups are also referred to as phyla. And then within 2 of these main phyla, the firmicides and the bacteriocytes, 90% of all the microbes fall within these 2 main categories. And then, of course, these main categories are subdivided in subcategories. And the important thing to remember is that these subcategories all have the unique functions and roles that they play and how they contribute to digestion, to how we feel, our energy levels, but also most importantly, they contribute in various ways to how the gut microbiome and the body protect us from harmful substances. So although there is not a single unique optimal gut microbiota composition, since it's different for each individual, what we know is that the more diverse your gut microbiota is, the healthier it is. So what we really want is a wide variety of different bacterial species living in our gut microbiome. And I will tell you a little bit later how we can increase the gut microbiome diversity with the type of foods that we choose to eat. So some of these little gut microbes produce neurotransmitters, and Hanli referred to them earlier. So remember, they are connecting the gut and the brain biochemically. And one such a neurotransmitter is serotonin. That's, of course, our feel-good neurotransmitter. But they also produce GABA, which plays an important role in the brain and mental health, and also regulate feelings of fear and anxiety. Some of these microbes are also involved in the production of short-chain fatty acids, which are beneficial byproducts of fiber digestion. And these short-chain fatty acids also play an important role in immunity. They provide fuel to other microbes, but they also can control, amongst other, appetite and food cravings, especially cravings for sweet or high-energy food. The gut and its microbes also control inflammation and make many different compounds that can affect brain health. However, it's important to remember that some metabolites can also be harmful and act as a toxin. So yes, although I like to refer to these microbes as bacterial superheroes, we must realize that, for instance, if we don't eat the right foods, we can also stimulate harmful microbes within the gut. And one example is lipopolysaccharide, or LPS. And that's an example of an inflammatory toxin made by certain bacteria. And it can cause inflammation if too much of it passes through the gut into the blood. And this can happen when the gut barrier becomes leaky. And for instance, too much sugar can cause the gut barrier to become leaky. And when this happens, it allows bacteria and LPS to cross into the blood, potentially resulting in a number of brain disorders like depression and Alzheimer's disease. So this was a mouthful. However, in the next slide, I would like to share a short video clip with you to just highlight the key aspects of the gut microbiome and how it's put together and how it works.
It's in you. It's all over you. It is you. Your body consists of an entire ecosystem of diverse and helpful little bacteria, more than 100 trillion of them. This is the human microbiome, and it means that we each have a troop of good bacterial superheroes to call our own. Did you know that the greatest concentration of bacterial superheroes lives in your gut? This ecosystem of microorganisms is a huge part of who you are. Your microbiome aids in food digestion to fuel your body, influences your mood and energy levels, helps you adapt to your surroundings to protect against harmful organisms, and much, much more. Scientists have only just scratched the surface of understanding how incredible these little guys truly are and how important they are to our health. It all started when you were born. Some of the bacteria in your mother's microbiome were passed along to you to become the beginnings of your very own microbiome fingerprint. When you were a baby, experiencing the world for the first time, the bacteria in your microbiome were doing the same. By the time you were a toddler, the makeup of your gut microbiome was almost fully matured. At 2 or 3 years of age, your bacterial superheroes had already established a natural, balanced state. Did you know that diversity is the key to a healthy microbiome? In a forest with only one kind of tree, what would happen if a beast came along and ate up all the leaves? All the creatures in the forest would be affected. In the same way, diversity is also needed in the bacteria of your gut. Scientists have discovered that your microbiome fingerprint actually needs to consist of many different types of bacteria to keep you strong, healthy, and resilient to drastic or harmful changes. Did you know that a healthy microbiome likes balance? When your microbiome becomes unbalanced, you may become unhealthy and even susceptible to chronic disease. But with the help of your superheroes, your microbiome always strives to return to a natural, balanced state. Eating pre- and probiotics can help your superheroes to be more effective in keeping you healthy. Your microbiome plays a starring role when it comes to this. From digesting food, to affecting mood and energy levels, to preventing invasions by bad microorganisms. Your superheroes are working hard to keep your gut healthy every minute of every day. The Canadian
How exciting is that?
Digestive Health.
Our unique microbiome fingerprint with a vast variety of different microbiomes and little bacterial superheroes. But it's important to remember that systems relating to brain activity, heart and lung function, digestion, energy production, and fighting infection are all interconnected and influence each other's development. Each system then signals back to the others through feedback loops that are already functioning at birth. All of these systems are responsible for our lifelong health and well-being. And you can choose to make healthier food choices. You are like the coach of these body systems, just like a coach of an athletic team. You can assist, you can fine-tune, and you can encourage your body to deliver its best performance now and in the future. So what you put in your plate is one aspect that you can fine-tune to improve your gut microbiota. So you may be familiar with the saying, you are what you eat. And in fact, what you eat determines which microbes get to flourish. I refer to good bacteria, but I also refer to bad bacteria or harmful bacteria. And if you eat the right foods, you can actually push up your amount of good bacteria. But if you don't eat the right food, the harmful bacteria will also come to the front. So there's a number of foods and or nutrients that may, for instance, increase good bacteria in the gut or may be converted to beneficial neurotransmitters, which has a direct impact on your gut-brain axis. These foods and nutrients include, in particular, high fiber foods, fermented foods, polyphenol-rich foods, omega-3 fatty acids, and the amino acid tryptophan. So high fiber foods contain prebiotic fibers, which are non-digestible polysaccharides that are good for your gut bacteria and improve diversity. Prebiotics can also reduce stress hormones and can help humans decrease the severity of particular diseases such as mental disorders. Fermented foods, for instance, yogurt, contain healthy microbes as well, such as lactic acid bacteria, and have been shown to also alter brain activity. And then omega-3 fatty acids are found in oily fish. But did you know that omega-3 fatty acids are also abundant in the brain? And studies in humans and animals have shown that foods with omega-3 fats can increase good bacteria in the gut and reduce the risk of brain disorders. And I've also referred to polyphenol-rich foods, which contain polyphenols, which are plant chemicals, and they are also digested by your gut bacteria. And when that happens, these polyphenols increase healthy gut bacteria and can also improve cognition and brain function. And then I've also referred to the amino acid tryptophan. And this is the amino acid that can be converted into the neurotransmitter serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, also by the gut microbacteria. But what does this mean in practice? So from a practical point of view, what should you put on your plate? Well, for starters, you should put plenty of fruit and vegetables that are, of course, high in fiber on your plate. These vegetables, especially the berries, are also high in polyphenols. And we should ideally aim for 5 portions a day. And of course, high fiber foods also include whole grains such as whole wheat bread and oats, which are also high in fiber, and legumes, for instance, lentils and beans, as well as nuts and seeds, are not only high in fiber, but also contain the amino acid tryptophan. Then, of course, your plate should also include protein-rich foods like eggs, which is also high in tryptophan, but also yogurt, kefir, or cheese, which are examples of fermented foods that also adds to your diversity of your gut microbiota. Then, of course, healthy fats such as olive oil and oily fish like salmon and tuna, which is, of course, high in omega-3, should also be part of your plate, since they are also beneficial for gut health. So research has shown that a plant-based diet actually improves gut microbiota diversity more than a purely animal-based diet. So the focus again is really on your fruits and your vegetables, your whole grains, and your high fiber plant-based foods to increase gut diversity. And interesting enough, also, you guys may have heard of probiotics, which is live microorganisms. But actually, what we know is if you're a healthy adolescent, by eating plenty of high fiber foods that contains prebiotics, you actually improve your gut microbiota health more so than when drinking probiotic supplements. But of course, in instances, for instance, when you are on antibiotics, then we know a probiotic supplement will benefit gut health. So it's not necessarily a must to supplement with probiotics if you're healthy, as long as you eat a healthy diet that's high in fruits and veg, whole grains, legumes, nuts, eggs, and then, of course, these oily fish and tryptophan-containing foods. But of course, there's also things that we should watch out for. And as I've mentioned earlier, although we can increase our good bacteria by eating the right foods, we can also increase harmful bacteria by eating diets that are especially high in sugar. And foods high in sugar, as well as addictive substances, often replace healthy foods and healthy food choices. And also then, of course, the related benefits on the gut microbiome. But too much sugar can actually reduce beneficial bacteria leading to a leaky gut. And that can cause diseases and ultimately disrupts gut microbiota homeostasis, which is also referred to as dysbiosis. Then smoking. Smoking also decreases the diversity of the intestinal microbiome via increase in oxidative stress and alterations of intestinal tight junctions, and alterations of intestinal microbiome resemble those demonstrated in conditions such as inflammatory bowel disease and even obesity. So smoking is not good for gut health. Then alcohol also is another culprit. Drinking too much alcohol can also change the composition of the gut microbiota and ultimately reduce the diversity. And remember earlier I said that a more diverse gut is a healthier gut. So we don't want to reduce the diversity by drinking alcohol or smoking too much. And then cannabis is another culprit. In humans, there's actually evidence to suggest that cannabis also affects the microbiome and change the ratio of bad versus good bacteria. So further research shown that if you use cannabis and not eat a healthy diet that are high in dietary fibers, then it can further depress the mitochondrial antioxidant protection and short-chain fatty acid production. Remember, we want to increase short-chain fatty acids because those are beneficial energy sources, again, for the gut to keep the gut healthy and to increase the diversity. And then drugs, for instance, cocaine also disrupts gut microbiome homeostasis. And all of these effects can ultimately impact brain health, but also cognitive behavior.
Thank you, Lisa. So now we can see that many things can be part of this story about the two brains. And we always want a happy ending to a story. So the happy ending to the two brain story is a vibrant vagal tone. That's the ending we want. You have to remember that all biological systems in your body interact with each other and adapt to what is happening to you. And also the choices that you make. These systems these systems are like a team of highly skilled athletes, each with a specialized capability that complements the others, and all of whom are dedicated to a common goal. The common goal of your body is to help you live life the best way you can. So over the past 3 weeks, we showed you how to create this backdrop of your story by starting with playful moments for setting the scene, helping your brain to feel safe by taking care of your body and protecting yourself from harmful situations that we spoke about last week. But now it also, something that you need to think about is making clever choices when it comes to anything you put in your body, and then being mindful of words, thoughts, and the quality of conversations, which is the topics that we are going to discuss in the next 3 sessions. We'll take a more in-depth look into the power of words. So next week, we are going to talk about the power of words on your brain and how that will affect your optimal performance. So with that, we conclude our session for this evening. I don't know if there's any questions we need to answer.
Oh, yes, there is. I hope you are prepared to answer. We started getting them much earlier today than we did in previous weeks. So they are ready for you. The first one was, do electricity sparks caused by neurotransmitters mean that our brains are literally running on electricity?
Well, I think that just the thought of thinking that in your head there's like electricity sparks all over the place is might be a little bit scary, but the truth is our whole body is running on energy, and energy means that there's a flow of energy. If it looks exactly like the electricity that we see and the sparks we see, I think that is not, it's not exactly the same, but it's true that our bodies runs on energy, and there is a form of electricity that is running through our bodies.
Cool. Okay, the next question is, can cannabis potentially lead to schizophrenia?
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't come across a study, I don't know, Hanley, if you have that specifically point to cannabis and schizophrenia, and I think you must also remember that there's various forms of cannabis, so the research focused very specifically on a specific form and associations with specific conditions. So I'm not aware, I haven't seen a study that links cannabis to schizophrenia, but what I can say is that we do know from the literature that cannabis do influence the gut microbiome. And whenever the gut microbiome is influenced in a way, it will influence signaling to the brain, and it will influence brain function and cognitive function to a certain extent. I'm not sure about schizophrenia, but it does influence the gut microbiome, and it does have a negative spillover effect on cognition.
Maybe we should pose that question to the psychiatrist and the neurologist in our team. They would be able to answer, give a better answer. So let's keep that question and we can answer it next week for them.
Oh, that will be really awesome if you can do that. Thank you, Hanley. Okay, our next question is, at school we learn about the food pyramid, and you have now shared with us a diverse plate. So how do we relate the one to the other? Should everything be consumed in the same relation to each other?
Yes. That's actually a very good question, and I'm very familiar with the food pyramid. Actually, what we have in South Africa these days is we actually now refer to the food-based dietary guidelines, where we refer to the different food groups, and these food groups are represented by circles. And yes, the fruit and vegetable circle is still the biggest circle. So yeah, if you think about a healthy diet, especially same for the gut, is yes, food and vegetables should probably form the biggest part of your plate compared to the old food pyramid. And then high fiber starches, not refined starches or sugar, the whole wheat should also be present on the plate. And then in smaller amounts, your fats, but the emphasis these days are on the healthy fats. So we don't say don't eat any fat, but it's still the fat is a smaller circle. Then, of course, I think sugar we can leave out. We are allowed to have sugary snacks every now and again, but that's still the tip of the pyramid. And then, yes, the proteins, the animal proteins, the lean proteins, the eggs, the milk, and the dairy is sort of in between the fruit and the veg and the starches. So, yes, you can compare and sort of draw a parallel line between the traditional food pyramid and foods that should be consumed to improve gut health.
Okay. Then we have another one on another question. Does this mean that without the two brains together, we can't function properly?
Well, definitely yes. And that's what we were hoping that you guys would get from today's talk, is that you cannot think that you've got a good brain, you're very clever, you can do all this wonderful thinking and come up with new and brilliant ideas if you do not support your brain by looking at your gut. So I don't know if my colleague wants to add to it, but that is definitely what we wanted to the message that we want you to take home today is you have to think about both. You have to take care of your gut. It is immensely important for optimal performance.
Okay, then we have another question that you might need to get an additional opinion on, badly. What role does medication prescribed by a general practitioner for mental health play in your gut-brain axis?
Well, definitely. We know that medication, anything that you put into your body will have an effect on your brain and your gut. And there's a reason for prescription medication. It's usually to optimize health. To answer that question, we need to know what kind of medication are we talking about, what the interaction with different body systems is, and what's the goal with the medication. But that's surely not what we are supposed to address in this talk. I am convinced that any medical practitioner will take good care before they prescribe any medication, especially to young developing children, adolescents, and teenagers. So if there's a particular question around that, it's something that we can also put to the rest of our team.
Okay, do people who suffer from diabetes or HIV still gain a balanced microbiome in the gut to help them fight certain diseases or infection?
Yeah, so HIV and diabetes do disturb the gut microbiome, and it's important for those patients, is particularly to focus on healthy eating and the prebiotics. And in disease states, we know it may be beneficial to take, for instance, additional probiotic supplements to correct the balance. But yes, usually a disease state is linked to sort of a pre-state where diabetes, for instance, is often linked to high sugar intake and overweight and obesity, which cause inflammation and which then disturb the gut microbiome, which can then spill over and cause disease. So it can be reversed, but they need to work harder to restore gut homeostasis.
Right. Corinne, do we have another question? What's happening in your brain when you try and study? You forget what you studied in the previous page, and you also forget things you did yesterday. Am I suffering with? I'm suffering with that, and can one get help for something like that?
Yes, I think that is definitely something that a person can get help for, and there can be many reasons. It could be due to a lack of sleep, poor sleep, many things, stress, your environment. So to answer that question, it would be a different answer for different individuals. But surely those are things we know so much. Neuroscience is helping us so much to understand why the brain is so important and how it works, and the factors that are affecting our brain function. So I'm sure that there is answers for this particular person that's asking the question. But unfortunately, we won't be able to solve it in this session today.
But I think that is something that we can definitely tell this person. I see that it is an existing student of the NWU, that you have a practice on campus, and that is something that they can get help for at your practice at
Yes.
the Center for Health and Human Performance. So it's definitely something that you shouldn't suffer with from without getting the help you need.
For sure.
Okay. Then do you think that whenever I get an uneasy feeling in my gut, that I should go with it since it plays a key role in the decision process, or should I resort to my logic and see how I react to the situation?
That's a very interesting question, and it's exactly what the next 6 sessions is going to be about, is helping you. You have to understand that there is a connection. We cannot just function on our gut, and we cannot just function on our logical thinking, because you might be thinking you're so logical, and then you find out, there's a lot of cognitive biases going on, and your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings and words that you are using is also affecting your gut as well as your brain. So there's this interchange happening in your body all the time. And I think stick with us, because in the next 6 weeks, 6 sessions, we are discussing that in depth. So as long as you understand tonight that there is a connection, and you really have to take care of that connection, I think the information is coming. Watch this space for more information on how how feelings and cognitive thinking is working together to make you to help you make good and sound decisions for your future and your life.
Great. Okay, how do I differentiate from good and bad bacteria? Because it's bacteria, how do both impact the gut-brain axis when it comes to our health?
Yeah, so actually, if we look at the microbiome, and we, often if they want to sort of evaluate someone's microbiome health, they also look at the ratios, the ratio of good to bad. So it's not simply just about the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And remember, each microbe and bacteria does play a role. So often it's the ratios that's important. I don't think it's very easy to necessarily distinguish between the good and the bad. I think you will be healthy, and there's more, you will feel healthier, you'll have more energy if you eat healthy and you feed your good bacteria, and the ratio of good bacteria is higher than the bad bacteria. And I'm really oversimplifying this. And as soon as your internal homeostasis in the microbiome is thrown off, you will start feeling tired. You will start experiencing, mood swings. You will start feeling down. So that's probably an indication that something is not right, and that the harmful bacteria is maybe the ratio is higher.
Okay, then we have a follow-up question to the previous one on HIV. If someone has acquired AIDS, do they still have a chance of sustaining a balanced microbiome at all?
If they follow a good diet, they can try and achieve a better balance. These days with antiretroviral therapy, it's possible to live a healthy life. And if you just, again, I think if you do have a disease state, you may need to work harder to not only eat a healthy diet. Remember, I'm now singling out healthy diet, but there's a lot of other factors that also influence the microbiome. For instance, exercise, healthy weight, trying to reduce your stress, sleep, recovery, rest. So all those things play a role. And I guess if you do have a disease state, you may just need to put in an extra effort to try and live a healthy lifestyle to optimize your gut microbiome balance.
Okay, if someone has a brain disorder, how do they determine if they need to change their eating habits? I'm quoting verbatim, so please translate into something that you understand. So I think, yeah.
So I guess I guess if I can link the brain disorder to a malfunction microbiome, then you will need to know. So from a very practical point of view, me just being a dietitian, I will ask you, what do you eat? And I can judge by what you eat. Do you need to follow a healthier diet or not?
Okay.
So if the brain disorder is linked to the gut, then probably it could be diet, but again, there's a lot of other factors that also influence the microbiome.
Okay. Bad bacteria Let me just read this before reading it out loud. Okay, I don't understand the question, so I'm not going to pose it to you because the grammar doesn't make sense, so I don't know what the question was. Then, what do I do to avoid having to use antibacterial medication?
What do I do to avoid having to use antibacterial medication?
And I think that means antibiotics.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, a bacterial infection can occur because you've catch a cold or you've cut yourself and you had an infection. So it's not necessarily just related to the gut microbiome, if that makes sense. So good hygiene, again, healthy sleeping habits, a good diet, drinking clean, safe water, those are things that will reduce your illness risk. And that will, reduce your need to take antibiotics. Because, I mean, if you are sick, you need to take antibiotics, but the illness is not necessarily induced just by a bad gut, if that makes sense.
I think it does. Okay, I think that's the last question I got, and then I'll end off with a comment on our WhatsApp group saying awesome session. So thank you very much. Wait, there's one more. Every time I think we're done, we get one more. Okay. That was the previous student that reiterates her question. I mean, that if a person doesn't know how to know when to eat or what to eat.
So if I just interpret it like it's standing there, if a person doesn't know how to eat or when to eat, I mean, if it's a knowledge, if you simply don't know, you can read up about it. You can try and find out from someone who knows. You can try and talk to a dietitian. You can contact a healthcare practitioner. So if it's purely not knowing, I mean, knowledge is everywhere. Try and read up on it. Andy, I don't know if you interpret the question otherwise. So you guys are asking very good questions.
I think if I have to answer that question, and definitely it's not my scope of practice, but I think just coming from neurodevelopmental and neurorehabilitation sort of perspective, we know that for your brain to function optimally, for your body to function optimally, we actually should all choose the best food options we have available to us every day, every single day. It doesn't matter if you do have any condition, medical condition, we all have to make the best decisions for our bodies with what we have available in our fridge and on our tables. So that's what my answer would be if I have to just interpret what I read there.
Cool. Okay, so I think we'll end it off there with thank you very much, both Lisa and Hanley, for your time once again. I really enjoyed our session this evening, and I believe that everyone else is also enjoying it. I've asked them on the WhatsApp group whether these personal development sessions are adding value to their experience. Sorry, my dogs are loud this evening. They're really saying that they find value in the personal development content, and I'm really happy to hear that. So thank you for the effort that you put into preparing for each week's session. We really appreciate that. And then in terms of your technical content in general for the Modiragatsi competition, I mentioned earlier that it will be great for us to see what you're doing when you share it with us on social media. If you don't have social media, please don't start using it just for this competition. It's not the idea that we want to lure you into a world that you're not supposed to be in or don't exist in already. So then you're on WhatsApp group, so share with each other what you're learning. I see that you're still not using the opportunity to learn from each other enough. So share your ideas. I'm there. We won't share it with anyone else. It is a safe space and it's a closed group. That's also why it's smaller groups for you to use between yourselves. Then I see there's a question regarding how do you add new content to the, or multiple answers to Ifundi. Yes, you can upload as many attachments as you would like to, so you don't need to attach only one attachment as your proof that you have done something. You can take multiple photos and upload multiple photos to Ifundi. You can also copy or paste the photos into a single Word document or a PDF, a PowerPoint document, if that's the way that you want to collect all of your thoughts and guide us through your thought process. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Some of you are joining us from well-resourced environments where you have your own computer at your own home. Others are using the cell phones of a teacher. So please use whatever resources you have to get the best learning opportunity from this. You will not be penalized for using lower technology solutions. We meet each of you where you are. So use what you have available and give us what you can. I'm just double checking for more questions. Okay, then I see that some of you have struggled with activity 3 and 4 because there was no template. I can't give you a template for brainstorming. That's your creative process. So I know that these two are the difficult ones, but I can't prescribe what you have to answer in those. It's up to each of you to do them. There is a template for activity 5 and 6 again, so you will be able to use the templates to answer them. But remember that I always tell my students that I hate giving anyone a template if it is in a structure form, because then you sometimes switch off your brain and you just start completing a form and you're not actually being creative while telling the story. So don't always rely on me leading the thought process, because you are all very clever and you all are very creative. And I think that all of you have the ability to answer to the best of your abilities. And now that all my kids are back at home after sports, it's getting very noisy in this environment. So I'm going to greet you all for the evening. Keep in mind that you can still ask all your questions on the WhatsApp groups. Please ask them on the groups and not in individual messages, because otherwise we might miss an individual message. There's a large group of you asking questions. And then I hope that you enjoy your week. I hope that you will stay healthy and safe, and that you will stay motivated in both your school work and the work you're doing for this competition. So thank you for everything that you are putting into this and the positivity that you're bringing to all of our lives as well. So good night.